You can find the probability of getting less than some value, more than some value, between any two values, or beyond any two values under a t-distribution. The value on the distribution is called a quantile. Let's go through each scenario. Suppose you have a t-distribution with 2 degrees of freedom. You may want to find the probability of getting a value less than -1. You can use the t-dist function to find the probability. For the x parameter, select the quantile of -1. For the degree freedom parameter, select the degrees of freedom. For the cumulative parameter, enter true because you want the probability to the left of -1, not at the point of -1. The output tells you that the probability is 0.21. You may want to find the probability of getting a value greater than 1. There are 2 ways you can do this. The first way is to use the t-dist function. For the x parameter, select the quantile of 1. For the degree freedom parameter, select the degrees of freedom. For the cumulative parameter, enter true because you want the probability to the left of 1, not at the point of 1. So far, the output gives the probability of getting a value less than 1. However, the total probability under the curve is 1. So to get the probability of getting a value greater than 1, calculate 1 minus the probability of getting a value less than 1. The updated output tells you that the probability is 0.21. A sense check tells you that this is correct because the distribution is symmetrical around the center, and 1 is the symmetrical point to -1. The second way is to use the t-dist rt function. For the x parameter, select the quantile of 1. For the degree freedom parameter, select the degrees of freedom. The probability is the same as under the first method. You may want to find the probability of getting a value between -1 and 1. There are 2 ways to do this. The first method is to apply what you've learned in a previous section and use the t-dist function to find the probability of getting a value less than -1. Then you use the t-dist function again to find the probability of getting a value less than 1. To find the probability of getting a value between -1 and 1, take the smaller probability away from the larger probability. The output tells you that the probability is 0.58. The second way is to use the t-dist2t function. For the x parameter, enter the absolute value of the bounds. You can do this by selecting the upper bound. For the degree freedom parameter, select the degrees of freedom. So far, the output gives the probability of getting a value less than -1 or greater than 1. However, the total probability under the curve is 1. So to get the probability of getting a value between -1 and 1, calculate 1 minus the probability of getting a value less than -1 or greater than 1. The updated output tells you that the probability is 0.58, which is the same as under the first method. A sense check tells you that this is correct because the total probability under the distribution is 1, and the sum of the probability below -1, the probability above 1, and the probability between -1 and 1 is indeed 1. You may want to find the probability of getting a value in the 2 tails, so either less than -1 or greater than 1. There are 3 ways you can do this. The first method is to sum the probability of getting less than -1 and the probability of getting more than 1. The second way is to remember that the total probability under the curve is 1, so calculate 1 minus the probability of getting a value between -1 and 1. The third way is to use the t-dist2t function. For the x parameter, enter the absolute value of the bounds. For the degree freedom parameter, select the degrees of freedom. You can see that all 3 methods give the same answer. In summary, These are the functions to find probabilities under the t-distribution. In older versions of Excel, the tdist-rt function is called tdist. See the template for the formulas to find probabilities under older versions of Excel. For more lessons on statistics, visit alphas&betas.org.